Hello everyone and welcome to Raquel Teaches Code. In today's lesson, I'm going to teach you how to create a working HTML form by giving it the functionality needed to process form submissions. And you'll be able to do it without needing to learn PHP or JavaScript. So let's get started. Okay, so right now, what I'm showing you is a very simple HTML form. Okay, it's created in the very standard way using the form element. It has labels and input types and IDs and names for each of the item elements in the form. So when we look at this form using a web browser, this is what it looks like. It just has a field for the first name and last name. Now I want you to notice what happens when I fill in the fields for this form and submit it. Okay, so I'm just going to use some simple information like Jane Doe. Okay, and I'm going to hit submit. And nothing happens, right? I hit submit. The fields are cleared out. We don't see any kind of confirmation message. We don't get an email saying that anything was submitted. Nothing, right? And this is the reason why. When we go back and we look at the code for our HTML form, we'll notice here that the very first attribute added to the form element, the action attribute, is blank. Okay, and as you've read in the information I provided before in the lessons, the action attribute is what defines which program or which service is going to run and process the form submissions when the submit button is pressed by the user. Okay, so this is blank right now, and so this form is not doing anything. While you can go ahead and submit information in these fields as much as you want, nothing will happen to it. It will just disappear. It's not being saved anywhere. It is not being captured anywhere. Okay, but there is a way to make this HTML form usable. So normally you would need to learn a language that allows you to create what's called a form processor, right? And on websites, that is typically done with either the PHP or JavaScript programming languages. And at this point in your web development journey, you have not learned those additional languages yet. Those are advanced steps. However, there are ways to work around that where you can connect your form to form processing options that have already been created, and these will make your form usable. Okay, so in this example, what I'm going to be showing you is how to use a free service called Formspree to be able to connect to the form you've already created, and that way you can make the form actually work and actually function when a user clicks on the submit button. Okay, so I'm going to show you how that works and how to set it up to make your form work. So when you go over to the Formspree website, you'll create a free account using your email address. Okay, and once you do that, you arrive at this dashboard and you can create what's called a project or a form in Formspree to get the information you need to connect your form to make it work. So this is how you get started and make it work. You want to click on this option here where it has a red button with a white plus sign where it says click to create project. Right? So when we click on that, we can create a new project. We can give it a name and we can give it a dashboard project. Right? So I'm just going to call this form sample. Okay? Just for these purposes here. And I'm going to select the option that says dashboard project, and then I'm going to click on create project. Okay. And when I do that, now it takes me to a new screen for the project, right? We see the name of the project up here, form sample, and there are 3 tabs underneath it: the overview tab, the settings tab, and the templates tab. And so in the settings tab, we want to make sure that we select the time zone that's appropriate, right? I'm on the East Coast, so I'm just going to select New York. I can start to type the word new and select New York. And I'm going to click on the save option to save that time zone, all right? And now after updating that in the settings, I want to go to the overview tab. Okay. And in the overview tab, I now can select the option that says click plus to create a form. All right. So when we click plus to create a form, give it a new form name. I'll just call this form 1. Okay. And it's in the project called Form Sample, which I created earlier, and now send emails to. So this is the email address that I used to create the account. And so this is what's being inserted in here by default. What this means is that when somebody fills out the form that I've created and they click the submit button, any information they've entered there is just going to be sent to this email address. All right. And so since I'm fine with that right now, I can click on create form. If I wanted to add additional email addresses, I can go to the account page to do that. I would need to do that first though, before I create this form processor and connect it to my form. And let's go ahead and click on the account page just so we can see what that looks like. Okay. So we have the account information, the email, when it was created, etc. Right? So this free account allows you to have 2 email addresses. So if I wanted to add an additional email, I can scroll down to this section called linked emails. I can click on add email and add the email address. And so for these testing purposes, up to 2 email addresses is just fine. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it with 1 email address. So I just hit the back button here to go back to this create form page. I'm going to call this, again, it replaces. So I'm just going to call this form 1 and I'm going to click on create form. Okay. And so now what Formspree will do is that it will create a sample HTML form, but we're not going to use that since I've already created the form I want to use in my code editor over here. Okay. But what this does do is that it creates the link that we need to connect to our HTML form so that it can actually work. And what we're going to use is what's called the form endpoint. So that's the first thing that's displayed here under this integration tab, the form endpoint. All right. And you'll notice that it even gives you the instructions. If you did the reading for creating HTML forms, part of the reading on form processing talks about the action attribute and the method attribute as well. Okay, so here it gives you the link. This is the link that's going to be used to perform the action of processing the form contents, and then we're going to have to set these settings for the action and method attributes to make sure it works correctly. So let's go ahead and now connect our form that we made from scratch with this processing service. You're going to copy this URL. So you can select it all and copy it with your keyboard or mouse, or you can just press this copy button here. Okay, switch back to your code editor, and this link is going to go in the value for the action attribute of the form element, right? So for the action attribute, you're always going to have the equal sign and a set of quotes, and you're just going to paste that in there. Okay, you're just going to paste that in there. All right, and now the method attribute also needs to be added to the form element, and you'll notice here in instructions it says to set the method attribute to post. Okay, and so what that's saying, and make sure that when you insert the method attribute that its value is equal to the word post. All right, so let's go back to our HTML and we're going to add the method attribute here inside of the form element. Okay, so just so we're clear, the form element is going to have 2 attributes added, this action attribute which we added, and now the method attribute. So we're just going to add a space in there, type the word method, equal sign, and double quotes. All right, and now we're going to add the word post. All right, and of course anytime we make changes to our HTML, we always want to save it. So I'm just pressing Control S to make sure I save it. Okay, so now the processing of the form, the functionality has been added. So now we can test it out, and we can test it out by submitting the form and then checking to see if we get any results in Formspree. Whenever we use an endpoint in a form and then any submissions are received through that form, those submissions can be viewed under the submissions tab here of Formspree. Okay. So let's just see if it works. Let's go back to our HTML form that we created, and now we're just going to refresh it to make sure that we can, refresh any changes we made to the HTML. And I'm going to add some information to this form and submit it, and we'll see if the information is actually captured. Okay. So let's put something like Idris Elba. Okay. And now we're going to click on the submit button. And notice now when we click on the submit button, we even have a success message here, right? It says, thanks, the form was submitted successfully, go back. And we can go back and it'll take us back to the form. But what we really want to do now is we want to check our Formspree dashboard to make sure that that submission was actually captured. So when we go back to Formspree and we click on the submission tab, we now see that it actually was captured. Okay. So this is how you can add a form processor to your form without needing to know any back-end code. You can use the free service from Formspree, integrate the endpoint that they provide into your form using the action and method attributes, save your changes, and then anytime that form is submitted by a user, the information entered will be viewable under the submissions tab. Okay, I hope that you found that helpful so that you can be able to create HTML forms that can work without you having to learn any extra backend code, or until you learned any extra backend code. All right, thanks for watching. Have a great day.